We now have a new government. With Keir Starmer now at the helm as Prime Minister, he and his ministers will be having their own say about how the country should be run. There will be a natural handover where the government will look at the previous government's policies, see what they want to change, keep or scrap. One of those is the Bibby Stockholm. Less than a month into this new government, the Home Office announced that the Bibby Stockholm's contract with Portland Port would not be extended beyond January 2025. The Bibby Stockholm at Portland Port was a part of the government's plans to reduce the cost on the asylum system and reduce the cost of using hotels to host migrants. Instead, it's been a total failure that has actually saved no money whatsoever. The Bibby Stockholm was condemned by Dorset Council, local councillors, local politicians, local residents, senior figures in the area and human rights campaigners. Asylum seekers who've been on board the barge have complained about its conditions, the isolation, the impact on their mental health, and unfortunately there has been a death on board. This is why the Bibby Stockholm is being scrapped, why it was so controversial, and what happens next to the barge. The Bibby Stockholm is an engineless barge that has a varied backstory. Built in 1972, the barge was converted into an accommodation hub in 1992. It was used to host homeless people in Germany between 1994 and 1998. The barge was previously used by the Netherlands to house around 500 asylum seekers in 2005. In 2013, the vessel was used as accommodation for construction workers at the Shetland gas plant. The Bibby Stockholm was rumoured to be coming to Portland Port in March 2023. It was a move that caught the then Conservative-run Dorset Council and then MP Richard Drax by surprise. In April 2023, the Home Office confirmed the barge would house 500 asylum seekers who are going through the asylum process. The UK government sought to use barges and military sites as a response to illegal migration via the English Channel, and reduce the use of hotels for asylum seekers. This policy was coupled with anti-immigration rhetoric similar to that of Donald Trump and helped fuel hatred towards asylum seekers and illegal migrants. It's no wonder that these messages were later seen during this summer's riots across the country. The plan to house asylum seekers on barges and military sites was widely condemned, yet Suella Braverman proudly presented the policy with the same response as a family being horrified at their cat bringing a dead pigeon into their household.
Mr. Speaker, the current accommodation system is unsustainable and hugely unfair to taxpayers. We recently set out to this House our plans for a fairer, more cost-effective asylum accommodation system, starting with former MOD sites Wethersfield and Scampton. We will see an accommodation barge arrive in Portland within the next fortnight, and we have secured another 2 to accommodate another 1,000 individuals.
It was the policy that the Conservative government felt that the British public cared most about, when in reality we were all wondering why our bills were so bloody expensive. There were local concerns about the barge as well. The Isle of Portland has no open hospital, there's areas of deprivation, low paid jobs, and only one route on and off the island. For a location, it was one that people were unhappy with. There were plenty of protests against the barge, and we'll focus on that later. As a local journalist at the time, I got the chance to go on board the Bibby Stockholm in what played out to be a bizarre school trip. The Home Office wanted local and national reporters to come on board the barge and see it themselves, ask questions to the operators, and show readers what it's like. The trip essentially showed that the barge wasn't as terrible as first thought, but wasn't the floating glamour hotel that critics thought it was. It was just mild and bland. A bit like uni halls, but on a boat. Following refurbishment, the vessel now had 222 ensuite rooms, with more beds installed in the rooms, a TV and games room, a gym, multi-faith room, computer room, and much more. More beds were installed in each of the rooms, which meant that residents would have less space than a car parking space. A bit of a squeeze and similar to that of a low-rated hostel in Europe. And it's not to mention the toll on the migrants' mental health, but also the easier transmission of illnesses and viruses. Right. That's not right, is it? Hold on a second. Tape! Get off me. Right. Now let's talk money about the Bibby Stockholm. Now, I don't have the budget for a fancy editor or have the know-how to do this all on DaVinci Resolve or a fancy editing software, so instead I'm doing it on a piece of paper, well, 4 pieces of paper. So the UK government wants to find something that was suitable for this whole project. They found the Bibby Stockholm. Now, the Bibby Stockholm is owned by Bibby Marine Limited, who are based in Liverpool. So they got into negotiations and they agreed a deal for £22 million for the Bibby Stockholm. Brilliant. Well, not brilliant. Now the UK government needs to find a home for the Bibby Stockholm for at least 18 months. They found Portland Port. Now they chose Portland Port because it's a private port, it's got big security, and it's a large working port. It's suitable for the Bibby Stockholm that they can tuck away somewhere around here. Now the UK government approached the owners of Portland Port, Langham Industries, and they agreed a deal worth around about £2.5 million. That ensured that the Bibby Stockholm will be at Portland Port for at least 18 months, with a contract up in January 2025. Now the actual strict money of how much Portland Port make from having the Bibby Stockholm isn't quite clear, but it's understood from the website that any ship the size of the Bibby Stockholm, the berthing fees every day would be £4,000. Now the UK government and corporate travel management agreed a deal worth £1.6 billion to not only look after the Bibby Stockholm, but the other barge that will be used and 2 other accommodation sites across the UK.
I gotta do it, man.
Dude.
Corporate travel management also used Laundry and Cling to also help out as well. So the government's agreed a deal, it's got a barge, it's got agreement with the owner, it's got a location, it's got people looking after it. But what about local provisions? What to help with the healthcare and voluntary sector stuff and any other stuff that the Bibby Stockholm would need locally? And of course it's in Dorset council land. So the UK government had to spend at least £3 million to give money to Dorset Police, Dorset Council and the NHS services in Dorset. Now more than £3 million was paid in funding to support these services to minimise any impact on local services, voluntary sector support and healthcare on the barge as well. Now for every occupied bed on the Bibby Stockholm, Dorset Council is also receiving £3,500. Now the Home Office said that developing 4 sites across the country, including the Bibby Stockholm, another barge and 2 asylum sites as well, it would save the taxpayer £94 million. It hasn't. Now the National Audit Office said that this whole plan would cost £46 million more than the government said it would. Over the next decade, it would cost them £1.2 billion. Now the same plan adds that the Home Office would have spent at least £230 million by the end of March 2024 on this whole plan. The only issue is this was open and another accommodation site was open and they were only between them hosting 900 people. Not great, is it? Not great logistically, not great use of money, really, is it? For a project that was supposed to save money and improve the asylum process, it's not really worked, is it? Or if you want a simpler analogy, Private Eye even crunched the numbers and found it was cheaper to send 500 asylum seekers across the world on a Disney cruise ship for a year. Which, to be fair, is an experience marginally better than being on the Bibby Stockholm. The barge had been refurbished in Falmouth before it was slowly towed across the English Channel to Portland Port. The scene at Portland Port on that day was weird, to say the least. Many people gathered to take a load of photos and videos, while some shared some casual racism. The last time a load of residents gathered to watch some boats on the coast was when the Olympics was hosted here in 2012. And a bizarre thing as well, since it's been here for about a year now, but it's become somewhat of a dark tourist attraction. I would go home and speak to my friends, they would ask me what's it like having the barge here, and I'd just say, well, it's just there. It's been there for a year and not really had any issues. I've had tourists come up to me and ask me where's the best place to look at the barge, and I say go to the Verne, go to the Giles Cafe, get yourself a coffee, get a sandwich, and you'll be able to see the barge from the garden and enjoy a lovely view of Weymouth and Portland. It's honestly lovely. After multiple delays and coy messages from the Home Office, the first group of asylum seekers were transported to Portland Port on August 7th, 2023. Some asylum seekers refused to go on board, but they were told if they were to be rehoused on the barge, their asylum claims would be sped up. 15 people were taken on board the barge, and there were some human rights campaigners welcoming them into the port. Others, though, weren't happy.
I'm not talking about what we're talking about this, mate. That, the sign at behind it and all of this rubbish. It needs to go to people of Portland and not these lot.
As a gesture of welcome to people.
Because they're economic migrants.
Oh, is that what you think?
Yes, they are. They come here just for the money.
You know, I mean, that's a myth.
They've gone through 5 safe countries to get here.
80% of asylum
More
claims.
than 80% of people who claim asylum in this
Where did
country.
you get that from? The government. Oh, and hang on a minute, and the government don't falsify figures to make sure.
I don't believe they falsify those figures.
Oh, really?
Come your hostility come from?
Charity begins at home.
Where does your hostility
This is my home. This is my island.
Where's your hostility come from?
You take him into your house then. Do you do that? You take him into your house.
We think the government.
But on the same day, traces of the deadly bacteria called Legionella were found on board. Probably best to do something about that. Or maybe not. After all, the Legionella bacteria can cause serious illnesses like Legionella's disease. But let's not scaremonger people here. It's understood that tests were carried out during the week, and it was only on the Friday where asylum seekers on board told about the bacteria in the water supply. It was this point that the 39 migrants on board were taken to new accommodation as a precautionary measure. Now, no migrants were believed to have fallen sick or developed the deadly illness. After the evacuation of the barge, its water system was flushed in the hope of eliminating the bacteria. Other safety checks and improvements were made in line with feedback from the Fire Brigades Union and other safety campaigners.
Do you agree with what Lee Anderson says? Should illegal migrants F off back to France?
Well, look, we all choose our own language, but what Lee was expressing was the deep frustration of the British public, not just at the numbers of people crossing the Channel, but the apparent refusal of some people to accept perfectly decent accommodation on this barge. You've got to remember that this is a form of accommodation that's being used in Belgium, in the Netherlands, has been used by British oil and gas workers. And so, if it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for the migrants as well. We'll always house people in decent, legally compliant accommodation, but it's not right that people can pick and choose and expect to be put up in 4-star hotels, and that's the change that we're bringing about.
It was this point that residents on board just didn't want to return. 39 migrants sent a letter to the Home Secretary to share the appalling conditions on board and claimed that one person had already attempted suicide. In August 2023, the Fire Brigades Union launched a legal challenge of the Bibby Stockholm. The Fire Brigades Union described the barge as a potential death trap due to a lack of fire exits and predicted overcrowding. Carolyn Parks, the town's Labour mayor, was upset with the conditions on board the barge. She previously visited the barge before asylum seekers first boarded in August and questioned why its facilities had been stripped back.
Horrified. It's absolutely horrific that you can think about accommodating up to 500 people without adequate facilities. It's horrific. And the worst thing about it is you're talking about 6 buses a day to transport people in and out of the Bibby Stockholm. It just isn't enough. The whole idea of housing people in a secure area like Portland Port is just so ludicrous, it beggars belief. It's not surprising that other ports across the country have refused to put up similar accommodation barges.
She later took the issue to the High Court, and she argued that Dorset Council could have enforced planning authority over the Bibby Stockholm at Portland Port. The claim was dismissed as the judgment found that neither the marine licensing regime nor the terrestrial planning regime applies to the barge. Despite protests and issues raised by campaigners, migrants returned to the Bibby Stockholm in October 2023. But our favourite orange protesters tried to block a coach carrying asylum seekers back to the controversial barge. The coach, which was carrying about 40 people, was blocked on Portland Beach Road by Just Stop Oil protesters. Residents on board felt isolated with not a lot to do. Many took up volunteer work in the local area, and Portland Global Friendship Group assisted them with work. The only way men could enter and exit the Bibby Stockholm was via a bus that operates once an hour between 7 AM and 10 PM. This is a bus that was taken from Portland Port to Weymouth Town Centre. Reports about the conditions on board shared by its residents and campaigners prompted a group of MPs to request access to the barge. This request to swallow Braverman was rejected as questions continued about the state of the Bibby Stockholm. Many people warned about the barge's impact on their mental health, and unfortunately, tragedy struck. On December 12, 2023, Leonard Faruku was found unresponsive on board the vessel. The 27-year-old from Albania died despite the efforts of emergency services. Dozens of residents, campaigners and asylum seekers gathered outside Portland Port to pay their respects. Floral tributes, candles, messages were all laid to remember him, and a minute's silence was also held after several speeches from campaigners. Coroner Rachel Griffin said there was no suspicious circumstances surrounding his death as she opened his inquest in Bournemouth. An inquest will be held at a later date as the Home Office then confirmed that there will be an investigation into his death. His roommate Yusuf found him unresponsive. He told BBC News how poor conditions were on board the barge and the complaints he still gets from asylum seekers.
He says many are struggling with life on the Bibby Stockholm, and he still hears their complaints.
The stress and anxiety in this barge plus poor quality of food. This barge feels like a prison. The food is not good. The Wi-Fi they used to talk with their family is not working proper. The network, the security guys treat them like they are criminal. They want to enter the barge, they have to go some security checking, and then the place look like prison, very isolating.
It's so rare that a policy unites the left and right in disagreement against something. Those on the left felt that asylum seekers should be better supported and the barge was inhumane, while those on the right felt that there shouldn't be any asylum seekers in the area. They were concerned about their backgrounds and their impact in the local area, and of course the barge shouldn't be here at all. The No to the Barge campaign held numerous demonstrations before and after the barge's arrival, with various media appearances. Stand Up to Racism Dorset sought to counsel protests with an alternative message that while the barge shouldn't be here, there should be better support for asylum seekers. Both protests had the same frustrations. They were angry at the lack of communication and consultation with residents, frustrated at Portland Port for hosting such a vessel, and the government for forcing the barge into the area. Many protesters on each side felt that demonstrations and local media coverage were the only way for them to express their opinions. Yet both groups clashed each other on social media and also at protests.
Exactly my point. So we know half the background about them because when they're arrested, we know the background. What background have we got?
Background check. Can I ask?
Oh, what? Do we know that?
Your background.
Have you seen
You're assuming they're racist before you met them.
No hate, no fear. Refugees are welcome here. No hate.
Oh, dear me, don't get so angry.
No blood. Refugees are welcome here. No hate, no fear, no terror.
But there was a creeping influence of the far right coming to Wellington, Portland. Threatening letters, which were reportedly from Britain First, were sent to politicians and local businesses. They warned them not to support the asylum seekers on board the barge, and the police actively investigated these letters. As far as we're aware, no one has been arrested in connection with the letters. Voice of Wales, which is a far-right outlet which has been banned from YouTube for racist views, also interviewed one of the main No to the Barge figures. Neo-Nazi organisation Patriotic Alternative has also had an influence in the area and held demonstrations. In September 2023, Patriotic Alternative organised a demonstration on Portland to express their views on the barge, with banners reading, "End the invasion, stop immigration." After a year of being here, it was clear that the Bibby Stockholm just wasn't working. It cost a lot of money, wasn't saving money on the asylum system, and people around here just didn't like it at all.
Phil, I'll get the money for you. Phil, come on. Tyler!
He's going to kill me.
Don't worry, I'll deal with him. I'll deal with him.
Where is my money?
You can't just come barging in there.
What have you done with my 50 grand?
I ain't here anymore.
Asylum seekers on board were growing frustrated at the lengthy delays of their asylum claims. Many people on there had been on the barge for more than 8 months. 8 months. I thought this whole thing was supposed to speed up the whole asylum process, but clearly, after a year, it just wasn't working. On board the barge in July, asylum seekers protested their lengthy delays in their asylum claims and held a sit-down protest and forego their breakfast and lunch meals. Campaigners and local residents held a vigil outside in solidarity. With the barge being here and many questions about its future, many were wondering what the new Labour government would actually do with the barge, especially since the contract was up in January 2025, and many people were wondering when the barge would be leaving. Initially, the reaction was mixed. Labour wanted to end the use of barges as soon as possible, but they were unclear about when these barges would actually be scrapped. Keir Starmer was cagey with ITV during the election campaign. He couldn't answer what he would actually do to the barge.
On the northern
but what
coast
would you do with the barge that's moored off Portland, currently housing a couple of hundred asylum seekers?
Well,
what would you do with that?
That is evidence of the failure of the government. They are using barges, they're using hotels, it's costing the taxpayer an absolute
But would you get rid of it?
We cannot go on like this.
Would you get rid of the barge?
At the moment what's happening is the number of people coming across the channel is at record numbers again, I think, today. We have to stop that happening, and until we get control of our borders, until we fix that problem, you've got an ever bigger problem, whether it's barges or hotels.
The Lib Dems, who now run Dorset Council, also objected to any proposal to extend the contract of the barge at Portland Port. After some unclear comments from Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, it was finally announced on July 23rd that the Bibby Stockholm would be scrapped. Dame Angela Eagle, the Minister for Border Security and Asylum, has made the decision not to renew the contract for the use of the Bibby Stockholm barge. This ties part of the government's plan to make £7.7 billion worth of savings in asylum costs over the next 10 years. The Home Office say they want to restart asylum caseworking, clear the backlog, and remove those with no right to be here. Extending the use of the Bibby Stockholm would have cost more than £20 million next year. Human rights campaigners were happy that the barge was going, but they expressed some concern that it would still be open during the winter and it would lead to harsher conditions for those still on board. When the barge was scrapped, residents on board celebrated with joy and jubilation. I even spoke to one resident on board who was happy to the fact that the barge was going.
It was in the lunchtime, and suddenly me and my friend were sitting together, and suddenly we start hearing some people clapping and some people they will enjoy. It's like Christmas for us, and we get shouted. What happened to them? And we start seeing the groups start ringing, and when we check the news, we just realize, we get the idea why they are happy. And after that, the manager of the barge, he asked us to come to the restaurant at 3 p.m. He said, we have the news, we want to share it with you. So we went to the restaurant and he started us. He said, the first thing, the contract will be not continue. And the second thing, for the people who've been in the barge more than 8 months, we will transfer to you and you will have your interview outside. And the rest of the people, we try our best to let you have the interview inside the barge, because we have 3 rooms for the interview.
How long have you been on the barge?
3 months and a half.
And how have you found being on board? Were you aware of the reputation of the Bibby Stockholm before you were moved on board?
In the beginning, when they told me you need to go to Bibby Stockholm, we don't mind, because as I told you, we are a refugee here. We are asylum seeker here, not a refugee yet. So wherever the government wants us to go, we don't mind, and we are thankful for them. Because in other places, even in my country, nobody will care for you like the British country. So wherever they want us to go, we don't mind, and we are not greedy. But the issue becomes for us to do the hunger strike and everything. We feel like we are in limbo, and we are in the ship. Nobody, when you become forget, nobody knows about you. And we got a letter before we arrived to the Bibby Stockholm, would say in 90 days, you will have your interview and you will have your recommendation. So they will move you from Bibby Stockholm and you will have your interview. So when we just live in Bibby Stockholm, we just meet people who've been in the barge for 8 months. We've been for 6 months without interview, without anything. So we said, okay, we need to talk to let the government remember us if they forget us. And that's why we did the strike and the hunger strike. So, as I told you, we are not greedy, and we are thankful and grateful for the government and for the people and for the taxpayer. We are more than happy, and we are thankful for you to let us get a home and get a place. And we are not saying, this is not a good place for us, or no, but there is something wrong when you tell me in 90 days you will be relocated and you will get your interview. And suddenly we're facing this problem. So this is the big issue for us.
It's understood that those who have been on the barge for more than 8 months will be taken off the barge to have their asylum claims processed elsewhere. Those who have been on the barge for less than 8 months will have their asylum claims sped up and still be on the barge. What happens now is the government is drawing a line into this whole saga, saying that this was then, but this is now. We can't do these barges anymore. But how the government will continue to manage asylum seekers will still be scrutinised. The welfare of asylum seekers in this country is split opinion, but what is clear is that barges like these should never happen again. Thank you very much for watching my video about the Bibby Stockholm. About a year's worth of reporting and love and labour went into this video, so I hope you appreciate the effort I went into this video. Now if you did like this video, please drop me a like. If you want to share your thoughts on the video, please drop them in the comments below. But please, because of the subject matter, please be civil. And of course, if you want to support the channel and watch more of my stuff, hit the subscribe button. I really do appreciate it. Now on the screen right now, there should be 2 videos that you might be interested in. I've got a few videos lined up, so I hope to see you again here soon.